All right, I have a lot of concerns about transgenderism, so here are those concerns. Buckle up. Let's go. Back in 2016, I was 20, and myself and a friend got an invite to go down to Dublin to be part of like the Irish government's youth consultation, youth forum on how best they could develop policies that would support LGBT plus young people. So it's for people between 16 and 24, I believe. We went down, and this was 2016, in around the time that same-sex marriage was just a thing, okay? It had recently passed, I think, the year before in the south of Ireland. So in my mind and in my friend's mind, that's what this was. Okay, we were going down, there were going to be tons of gay people, lesbian people, and that was going to be the thing. But actually, whenever we arrived, I'll never forget it. It was a really strange, quite like sobering, eye-opening experience. The plan of the day was that we would like sit around tables, and there'd be someone, a government representative, I guess, sitting at the table, and they would ask us questions about, okay, what can we do to help LGBT plus young people in school? And one table would be the school section. You would like talk about that, and then it would be, okay, what can we do at a local level? What can we do in all healthcare, all these different provisions? How can these parts of the country and life better support and cater for LGBT plus young people? And myself and the guy I went with, we like took a pause at lunch. We sat together and we were like, I very much feel like our job is to just kind of listen today and not really say very much, to just be observant, keep our eyes open, see what was happening. And that was the attitude I brought into it. And it was really, it was insightful. Really quite like hard, actually. I distinctly remember sitting at a table and we had to go around and introduce ourselves, say our names and our pronouns, and that was a very like new thing to me. That was the first time I was ever asked, what's your pronoun? So we were going around, and at one side of the table there was this guy. He was a fairly butch looking guy, okay, a fairly big masculine looking guy with like Tarzan hair, and comes to him, I can't remember his name, but it was like, okay, I'm Jordan, I use she, her pronouns. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? You're like a buff dude and you're saying that I need to call you she? It was like a totally new thing to me. And then we got to another person, and this person, like I remember walking in and seeing this person, and they were wearing trousers with all sorts of like trans slogans on them. It said like smash the binary, they, them, trans rights, and all these different things just all over their trousers. They had a denim jacket on with all the labels on it and the badges. This was before the trans flag got put into the pride flag. So there was a pride flag and there was a trans flag, all sorts of the wee like gender symbol, but with both of them at the same time. That person was like very clearly not well. They were using a walking stick, they were really frail, and like their skin, like you could tell this was not a well person. And I distinctly remember sitting around this table and trying to be observant and seeing something that really kind of broke my heart. All the people sitting there, I just realized either had like, it was warm in the room, like, but they either had like long sleeves that they'd pulled right down halfway over their hands, or they were wearing short sleeves and you could just see the whole way up their arm, like scars. The few who, like some of the people who were wearing long sleeves, you could actually see, sometimes it would just get caught or it would slide up and you could see the exact same thing. And I thought, these are really hurting people, okay? These people are finding life really difficult. They're going through some stuff. And yeah, it was really like sad to see these are very clearly broken people. And these people are being asked, okay, how can we lead the way with policy? How can we redirect and change our country to support you? And I'm thinking, these people do not know who they are. These people like don't have a handle on their lives. How are they going to guide a country and lead a country whenever they are so clearly lost and hurting? And it was tragic because like trans people are people, and as humans, they're made in the image of God. Okay, every single human on earth, trans, cis is, I suppose, the opposite. Every single human is made in the image of God, and so because of that, they're infinitely valuable, worthy of dignity and respect and care. They need to be looked after, and those people were hurting, and they were looking for answers to the tension and the pain that they were feeling. And in looking for answers, they didn't have answers, but they were leading others into their wrong and false answers. They're leading the way in this ideology, and it's a destructive ideology that is really harming people. So look, some people are not going to get this video. Some people are going to think, oh, this is the most transphobic thing I've ever heard. This isn't coming from a place of transphobia. I mean, phobia is an irrational fear or hatred of trans people. I don't hate trans people. I see them as human beings worthy of dignity and respect. God loves them because of that. I need to love them. They're made in his image. And so I really, like, since that day, actually, I really have, like, cared about trans people. Some of you are probably not going to get that and you're still going to think it's transphobic. That's okay. I can live with that. Now, of the, like, 33 tabs I have open on my phone, I'm one of those people who, like, sees the interesting article and then hit open a new tab, and then I'll, like, either never read it or read it, like, 2 months later. So, I have 33 tabs open on my phone. Need to get a handle on my life here. But of those 33 tabs on my phone, 12 of them, I counted 12 of them, are to do with transgenderism. See, this is something that I think quite a lot about, and I read quite a lot about it, not just from one perspective, but from, like, both sides of the thing. I really want to understand it, and I have, like, put a lot of effort and work into understanding it. And something that I read recently that actually really concerned me and partly prompted this video was that there's a disproportionate number of people who refer to gender identity clinics who are neurodivergent, who have autism or Asperger's or ADD. I read this from some, I assume it was like a conservative tabloid or something, so I thought, okay, right, let me look into this. Looked into it, found on LGBTQIA.healtheducation.org, they affirmed this. They said it's true. They says evidence suggests neurodiverse people, particularly those on the autism spectrum, are more likely to be gender diverse and have a lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer or asexual sexual orientation compared to neurotypical people. Now, leaving aside the gay, lesbian, bisexual part, that's a whole other video. I want to, like, think about the trans thing. Now, as far as I'm aware, I don't have autism or Asperger's or ADD, but I'm a youth worker. I know a lot of people who do. I've done my training. I, like, work closely with a lot of people. I have friends who do, and so I kind of understand things, not from a first-hand perspective, but I do know my stuff about it. And the sense of, like, I guess, social alienation that's quite common to people who've autism and Asperger's and stuff. The sense of dislocation between themselves and, like, the world around them, not feeling quite like they fit in. I can totally see how transgenderism can be held out to them as, like, the silver bullet that's going to fix all of your problems. Now, if you combine that with kind of tendency there to have a period or a phase of, like, special interest in a particular thing, and then you add in the algorithmic nature of social media, especially like TikTok and all of the gender affirming stuff on there, and especially stuff from gender affirming people who are neurodivergent, who would say, oh yeah, I'm autistic and trans, autistic and queer, all those sorts of things. If you combine all of that, then you've got a recipe for more and more people who are just have autism, have Asperger's, and they're trying to navigate their way in the world. They're trying to work out how their brain works and how to find their way in life. They're going to see transgenderism, and they're going to be told that transgenderism is the magical pill that will make your life way easier. They're going to be sold the lie that this is the thing that you need to make you feel normal, and this is the reason that you don't feel normal. And that's, like, tragic. Okay, it's, like, really sad that people with neurodiversity don't feel that way, and we obviously need to do a better job, I guess, of making them feel welcome and included. And actually, quick side note, I think the church does this very well. Not a flex on myself or my church, but just the church generally, Christians generally, like, we actually do this pretty well. Could be better, yeah, but so could everywhere else. Now, back to the, like, trans thing, I guess. I'm not making any, like, sweeping definitive statements about, like, oh, here is exactly what this data means, because, like, I don't have those stats. I don't have that data. But it is a concern that the people who are on the autistic spectrum, etc., that those people are disproportionately more likely to identify as trans and to go through the whole, like, procedures of everything that entails. That's a worrying thing. It's not going to be a popular perspective. Probably of all the things that I say in this video, this might be the thing that annoys the most people. But look, it comes from a place of concern for people who identify as trans, concern for people who are autistic. I just think we need to study that correlation a little bit more before people who are autistic come to gender clinics and are told, yeah, you must be transgender. Now, another thing that concerns me, and part of the, like, the drive or the momentum behind all of these changes, I guess, is that, I mean, it's a well-attested fact. We all know ideology develops quicker than science. Scientific studies take a long time to do. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of people, but an idea, you contrast that with an idea, someone can post something on TikTok, it gets 10 million views, it gets shared a ton of times, and then people have their own perspective on that, and they add to it, and they alter the idea slightly, and an idea can just grow and spread and develop with incredible speed. And then the science is left to play catch up and think, okay, well, is there any scientific basis for this? Do the stats, does the data confirm the truth and the veracity of this? And unfortunately, whenever it comes to transgenderism and transgender policy, the ideology has driven the policy more so than the science. And so for years, the default position of the NHS, which is like the UK and Northern Ireland's healthcare provider, it's cool. But for years, its default position has been gender-affirming, which is something we'll talk about later on in the video. But it's been gender-affirming, where if someone comes to the clinic and says, I identify as trans, I'm this instead of that, then the default position will be, yeah, you are. Let's work with you to help you along that journey, help you to go down that path and take whatever interventions and steps are necessary. Now though, like really recently, the NHS is changing that position, and like this is speculation of course, but part of me wonders, is it because all of a sudden there are all these people who are suing the NHS, suing the Tavistock Clinic because they've went through the gender transitions process and then detransitioned and thought, why was I not asked? Why was I not questioned? Why did everybody at every step of the way say, yes, take the next step, you are trans, you keep going along this journey? Whenever the policies and the procedures are driven by the ideology rather than an actual scientific basis, rather than a data-driven basis, then the people are the collateral damage of that. Okay, these destructive ideologies just cause a mess in people's lives, and it's only going to be years later that we think, uh-oh, we shouldn't have let that happen, but it's too late. So many people have wrongly had transition surgery. Destructive ideologies, without exception, cause massive harm, and I really think that the transgender ideology is one of those that we need to think and assess it and be like, okay, well, is this actually helpful? Or is it causing harm to people? And I really do think it's causing harm to people. Now, touching on that affirmative approach to gender healthcare that we talked about a wee sec ago, it is essentially that people come to clinics and there's no pushback, there's no questioning of their gender. It's just, if someone comes and says, I'm transgender, then the default response to that in culture as well as in medicine, the default response to that at the minute seems to be, okay, yeah, we believe you. Like, you have to affirm that, you have to go along with it, otherwise you're transphobic. People are told to be their inner authentic selves. And so, like, imagine a scenario where someone comes to the doctor and says, look, I feel this disconnect between who I am in my mind and my body. Okay, my body doesn't match my inner authentic self, and so I want to take intervention. I want to do stuff so that my body matches my inner perception of what it should be. The affirmative approach that we see in culture, that's like all over TikTok and that's been sadly present in healthcare professions, is to say, okay, yeah, you're right, your inner self, that's the real you, and so we'll take whatever steps are necessary to align your physical body with the you that you perceive in your mind. But this isn't going to be a popular comparison, I don't think. Go back and listen to that wee bit again, with the newfound knowledge and perspective that I wasn't talking about gender dysphoria there. I was speaking from the perspective of an eating disorder. In an eating disorder, there's a disconnect and a real tension and struggle and frustration and pain between like how a person perceives themselves and their physical body. But we know to treat the mind rather than the body, because that's the issue. That's the problem that is going to cause damage to an otherwise healthy body. And it is a really crippling and awful thing. I'm not like downplaying either of these traumas, either of these dysphorias in any sort of way. I fully recognize the pain that causes in someone's life, but we don't take that approach, and rightly so, with eating disorders. So why do we take it with gender? Why do we do radical interventions in an otherwise healthy body because the person's mind is saying, this is not the way my body should be? And like, even more than that, it's not just that we do that, but anything less than that, anything less than affirming a trans identity is seen as transphobic. People think, you hate me, you're gender critical, and you're a transphobe, so I'm going to cancel you, I'm going to get the Twitter mob on you, all that sort of stuff. But I'm really pretty sure that all of those people who detransitioned would really wish someone had questioned their trans identity. I'm sure they're all thinking, why did no one say to me, are you really trans? Can we not work on the mind and bring the mind into alignment with the body rather than having these surgical and chemical procedures that are going to cause irreversible damage to your body? So, oh, whoops, you're not trans anymore, and sorry, you're going to have to live with the consequences of that. And often, this is the thing that really gets me, often it's based off decisions that people make as children or as teenagers. In the year 2009/2010, to the Tavistock Gender Clinic in England, which is now closed down because it's been sued a lot, there were 77 referrals in the whole year to the Tavistock Gender Clinic. In 2018/2019, 2,590. It's through the roof, and people will inevitably say that, oh, that's because there's less of a stigma around it now, which is, ironically, pun intended, a very binary way of looking at it. Because yeah, I'm sure there are more people going forward for gender referrals because there's less stigma, but we can't just make a sweeping statement like that without any evidence. And like, I really, really doubt that the exponential increase in referrals to the place is just because all those people feel more comfortable in going now. No, there's a massive like cultural influence, cultural momentum behind this thing, and we've already talked about the neurodiversity, the autism thing. I just think that young people, teenagers, like if you know any children or teenagers, because a lot of people don't, okay, and that's fair enough. I work with them every day. Teenagers, children, they're wonderful people. They're amazing. I just love working with them, but they make some really poor decisions. Like sometimes they do stuff and you're like, how on earth did you come to that conclusion? Why did you make that choice? But it's because their brains are literally less developed than the brain of an adult. Whenever you're a teenager, your brain is not fully developed. Whenever you're a child, even less so. And so if a child came to their parent and was like, hey, can I get a tattoo? The parent would rightly say no, because you have no idea what it means to live with that for the rest of your life, to have long-term consequences of that action. But when 9-year-olds come to a gender clinic and they say, I identify as a different gender, people have been more than happy to say, yeah, do you know what? You're probably right. And so we'll give you puberty blockers. Between 70, this is like literally true, between 70 and 90% of people who identify as trans before puberty, if they go through puberty without any intervention, without like social transitioning, without chemical or surgical transition, if they just ride it out, then post-puberty, they'll realize that they're not actually trans. Oftentimes they're gay, they're lesbian, bisexual, but they'll not be trans. Between 70 and 90%. And so why are we giving people puberty blockers? Puberty blockers are sold as like, oh, we're just hitting a pause button. We're just giving the body a room to grow and to breathe and to let the person develop their own perception of their identity and their gender. Like statistically, almost 100% of people who go on puberty blockers will go on to have later transition, because I mean, if they're going to grow out of it through puberty and they're not allowed to go through puberty, then they're being encouraged along this road, being every step of the way being told, yeah, keep going along this road. And obviously they're going to have further interventions. So with that stat in mind, then you're thinking, okay, well, about 80% of the people who identify as trans before puberty or before puberty's over, about 80% of them aren't actually trans and would naturally just grow out of it. Well, if we take those people, take the 100% and put them all on puberty blockers, put them all on hormone replacement therapy and surgically transition them, there's 80% of them who probably didn't need any of those interventions, but they're now the guinea pigs to see, okay, well, what effect will puberty blockers have on you in the long term? I mean, you're not going to be able to have kids, so if you want to detransition, hard luck, you can't have kids. There are concerns about the effects it's going to have on bone density and on heart health and like all these other measures of just a person's physical well-being. All these people are essentially the guinea pigs for this stuff, and as many as 80% of them who go as adolescents don't need to go. They would grow out of it anyway if it wasn't encouraged and pushed and affirmed. We always look back on previous generations and think like, how could they be so stupid? How could they make those decisions? And honestly, people will look back at our generation and think, why did they let this happen on such a wide scale? Because look at the health crisis we have now with people who transitioned when they were 13, 14. I think the average age of referral is around 15 or 16. I mean, 15, 16-year-olds, they don't make good decisions. They can't assess the long-term consequences. So even if you're saying to them, oh, whenever you're 50, you might have really, really brittle bones, they can't wrap their head around that because their brain's not fully developed. So then why are we giving the power, and even to like children, why are we giving such power over the rest of their lives to them whenever they're not fit to make those decisions? It is like madness. And again, this isn't an attack on trans people. Like, trans people are the victims of this. And yeah, like, some trans people will go through their trans life and be very happy with their decision, but like, so many won't be. And you gotta ask the question, well, what would have happened if the default position had been, let's actually just counsel them and try and help them work through their gender dysphoria. The last thing that I'll like probably spend the least amount of time on is the whole like capacity for this to be abused. I'm thinking of like sports, for example. What a shambles. If you've ever played mixed gender sports, you know it's a really bad idea. And like, yeah, that's all I'm going to say on the sport thing. It's a shambles. And then there's also like the whole aspect of women's spaces, of changing rooms and toilets. I mean, if you think that men are not going to abuse that and manipulate that for their own perverted interests, then you don't know men. Like, actually, you're just being naive. Dangerously naive. I mean, there was the story, it makes me laugh, but it's also kind of sad. In America, I'll stick a link to it in the description. In America, a man got arrested for a crime. He's going to prison, says that he identifies as a woman. So he gets sent to an all-female prison. And lo and behold, a couple of months later, one of the inmates is pregnant. All-female prison. He got her pregnant. I mean, even thinking of like the culture of that previously all-female prison, what's the power dynamic there going to be like whenever you have one man walking in? It's nuts. Like, it is insane. Jesus says in Luke 7:35, wisdom is proven right by her children. Essentially, if you want to know what the right path is, if you want to know what's wise, then just wait and see the outcome, see what comes of it. I think we're going to see a lot of just mess because of this, but unfortunately, it's the people who suffer. And so look, at the end of the day, I want to see humans flourish. I want to see us be all that we were made to be, all that God wants us to be, to fulfill his purpose for our lives, because in that is true life and fulfillment and joy. The path to human flourishing is the narrow way of Jesus. And honestly, I think trans ideology gets in the way of that. And we're going to see that as the years go by and the destructive fruits grow out of the decisions that we as a culture have made. So look, let me know what you think. If you found this in any way helpful or insightful, if you think, okay, this is something that I would want other people to hear, then probably the best thing that you can do is to hit it with a like, because that just helps it spread to more people. I have another few videos on like LGBT plus stuff, so if you want to watch one of those, then you can click here. Hope you enjoy that. But yeah, thank you for being here. Please don't dox me or anything. That would be nice. Yeah, see you in the next video. God bless.